The Savannah River, an icon of the state of Georgia and of the South. With all the beauty that the river provides, it's hard to imagine that beneath the waters is a catastrophe waiting to happen. On the river, Savannah's port ships goods from all around the world. Along the Savannah River, 64 different facilities dump waste into the river. With such practices regularly being performed, someone must monitor the river to make sure things don't spin out of control. This is the responsibility of the U.S. Coast Guard.
Well, we're always on the lookout for pollution incidents, whether it be in the realm of oil or hazardous materials. We'll conduct both surface, which will be a boat patrol, and aerial patrols to be on the lookout for things that don't appear to be normal. We also conduct landside facility inspections, spot checks to make sure that they're operating in accordance with all of the federal regulations.
With the Coast Guard on an ever-vigilant watch over Savannah's natural resource, it would seem that extreme circumstances are kept under wraps. However, normal wastewater must also be dealt with in a thorough manner.
Well, we have 4 treatment plants. We have 1 major treatment plant. They're all advanced, what we consider tertiary treatment plants, capable of using that water for reclaimed water. We use a lot of that water to irrigate golf courses before we release it back into the rivers. And we feel that all of our treatment plants are state-of-the-art.
Of the 4 treatment plants, the one on President Street is the most established and well-known, reclaiming more than 500,000 gallons per day. Recently, the EPA rejected Savannah's oxygen standard for the local water. It's the EPA's stance that the industrial dumpage into the river has led to oxygen deficiency.
The low oxygen in the river is not supportive of certain species that are very important, to the state, to the nation, to the world. I mean, I do believe there's a short-nosed sturgeon habitat, also striped bass habitat in that river that utilize Savannah Harbor for, breeding and reproduction. So when you have low DO, a dissolved oxygen in the river, these fish are kind of scattered throughout their normal habitat. It has been intended, the state and the feds, in order to keep a dissolved oxygen in the river so that won't happen.
It would seem that every angle of the problem is being controlled to the best of our abilities. But while obvious causes are being fixed, the real culprit to the problem is seeping by unnoticed.
Point sources are the ones that people easily understand, and those are the ones where there's a sewer outfall or a pipe, or it's immediately adjacent to, for example, a pulp mill effluent, that kind of a thing. And those are relatively easy to regulate because, by definition, you can point to them and say, do something about that. The non-point sources are much more difficult to regulate. Those are the ones where you just have general levels of seepage, and you have runoff from streets, and you have fallout from the atmosphere, and there's sort of broad spectrum mechanisms for pollutants or compounds entering the waterways.
Dr. Peter Verity is a leading expert at the Skidaway Institute of Oceanography. He's been a professor at the Institute for over 20 years and is an associate editor on 3 of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world. During his tenure at the Institute, Dr. Verity has become one of the foremost experts in the area of eutrophication.
Nutrients, unfortunately, outside the scientific world have a positive connotation, and that's because we add nutrients to potted plants in our homes, and we add nutrients to our garden, and we add nutrients to our lawns, and all of those things seem to make our world better. They make things grow. And the problem is that as long as that growth is controlled, or the nutrient levels that are added to a waterway or to land are controlled, then everything's fine. It's when it's uncontrolled that the growth of the resulting organisms becomes detrimental to the environment.
The depletion of oxygen levels would not result in instant death. Rather, the lower levels would hinder species' likelihood of reproducing, thus diminishing the population. New organisms such as jellyfish would move in to take their place. Since 1986, Verity has led teams of scientists and students in his sampling program. The sampling conducted specifically measures the effects of eutrophication in the local waterways. Few programs in the world have gone on for as long as Verity's, and even fewer chart as wide a range of species, which goes from viruses to fish. Over 20 years of research has shown Verity and his team that eutrophication is definitely taking place in local Savannah. There are many facets to the economy of Savannah, two of which are tourism and seafood. If jellyfish moved in to take the place of more charismatic or at least edible species, the economy all around would be hurt. Those who have lived here all their lives would be hurt most.
I used to go down on the river with my parents and with my mom. We used to do boat rides, and it was just, all the buildings weren't there now. We didn't have the Hudson Island. We didn't have all that. It was just water and vegetation and trees, and the breeze was just so clear and so crisp and clean, and the water didn't have the trash in it that it has today. And when we destroy the ecosystem as we know it to be, and it's not as it used to be, nothing is, because there's so many chemicals, so many pollutants, there's so many things that's happening now. So I think that we need to be very careful, because if we are not, then we're going to have a very serious problem.
The progression from a pristine environment to a negatively impacted environment in terms of too many nutrients, too little oxygen, too many jellyfish, all of those things that we predict are coming to coastal Georgia have happened elsewhere, and that's why we're quite confident that it's going to happen here. It's just a question of time.
Many bodies of water have already suffered from the effects of eutrophication. The Chesapeake Bay is a prime example of what eutrophication can lead to. Absurdly serene and menacing, the jellyfish have thrived in an environment where nothing else can. As for the Savannah River and its interconnected waterways, Dr. Verity believes that awareness in voters is what's needed to promote real change in how Savannah handles its problem. Local individuals can always use low-phosphate detergents, monitor the amount of fertilizer put on their lawns, and make sure they have a vegetated buffer between their lawn and the water if they live on the coast. But even this will only do so much. It will take voters to persuade legislators to make stricter regulations on local construction zones and replacing septic tanks on coastal homes with sewage systems. These items are the ones that will truly change the outcome of the eutrophication dilemma. Savannah has a unique opportunity. With the scientific knowledge at hand, it's possible to completely prevent eutrophication from consuming the river. If successful, Savannah would be the first to effectively prevent this kind of ecological disaster, making it a revolutionary example for the rest of the world to follow.